Roy Hedrick's two daughters, who will speak, were always after Roy to make sure he stayed with his notes, because if he didn't, it would go on half the day.
Got my notes. Me too.
So they have their notes and I have my notes. Larry, Dave Roquefort, I'm glad they made you a district superintendent, because like all district superintendents, your vision is not very good. I am on the right side of that picture, not the left side. And the beautiful lady who spoke to us first and said some things around here are outdated. Thank you. I wish the persons who are responsible for the selection and the purchase and the development of this camp were here today.
Yes.
There is no way one can count or name them all, for there were hundreds, yea, thousands, who were members of what was then the Virginia Conference of the Evangelical United Brethren Church in the Shenandoah Valley. There were churches up and down this valley from Roanoke to Martinsburg, West Virginia, as well as churches in Maryland and the eastern parts of West Virginia, and several in Arlington and Alexandria that were Virginia Conference Evangelical United Brethren churches. Before the union of the Evangelicals and the United Brethren in Christ in 1946, youth camps were held at Shenandoah College and Conservatory of Music, which at that time was in Dayton, Virginia. After that, the conference rented camps in Pennsylvania, Camp Bethel in Troutville, which belonged to the Church of the Brethren, and for several years, Massanutten Springs, which is owned by the Presbyterian Church. But there was always that dream that one day we'd be able to purchase our own land and develop our own camp. And so in the early 1960s, the conference authorized the Board of Education to look into the purchase and development of such a facility. But there was a great deal of concern about the cost of such a project. For you see, at the close of 1950s, Shenandoah College and Conservatory of Music, owned by the conference, was making plans to move from Dayton to Winchester. To do so, we needed, on a conference level, to raise $250,000. And Winchester would raise $250,000. That move was made in 1960. But we were still seeking to raise the $250,000. kind of small today in terms of finance. But you see, at that time, the Virginia Conference of the Evangelical United Brethren Church had a total of 22,000 members, about the size of most of our districts today. How could we raise an additional $75,000? The conference asked every church to contribute $1 per member, $22,000. In addition, we were asking individuals, men, women, children, Sunday school classes, youth groups, to join a $100 club for the development of a camp. There were persons committed to that dream. Of all the people I could imagine being so much gung-ho and in favor of it, was the president of Shenandoah College and Conservatory of Music. And suddenly, the dream came to life. The first 117 acres was purchased by the conference from the Reed brothers. 117 acres for $22,000. And the Reed brothers returned $2,000 to develop the camp. They were members of Mountain Valley EUB Church, just north of here, a couple miles. The handshake down at the barn between the Reed brothers and Reverend Tom Kaufman and Mrs. Thelma Pollard bound the agreement. Tom said, I was asked by the brothers, will the property always be used for children and youth camp? To which he said, I replied, as long as I live, and he still lives, but not very well, I will try to see that this wish of yours is always fulfilled. It's water. A dream is one thing. An awakening to reality is something different. Somehow to bring that dream to life. The Board of Education appointed the Reverend Don Freidinger, now deceased, and the Reverend Roy Hedrick to oversee the development of a camp. To develop a road system, housing units, kitchen and dining hall, swimming facilities, water and sewer systems, takes far more than a dream. You see, experts from all of the above projects gave of their abilities and their time in designing this facility. Clergy and hundreds of laity came on weekends and weekdays, if possible, to bring that dream to a reality. 3 dorms, the dining hall, were the first buildings to be constructed. The construction was primarily done by volunteers who came weekends, during the week, and labored from sunup to sundown to make it happen. The Reverend David F. Glovier and Mrs. Ethel Glovier of Verona, Virginia, gave a gift of $10,000. We thought, my goodness, $10,000 to purchase material to build this chapel that we now sit in. A great deal of the manual labor required for its construction was done by volunteers, including the senior youth who came that summer in 1967 and helped to build this building. Naming the camp was a conference-wide project. The most votes were cast out of many offered. The most votes were cast for Camp EUB Overlook. But the final choice, as we stood in this place, we decided that the best vote was for Camp Overlook. To overlook the Shenandoah Valley and the mountains to the west as far as West Virginia is indeed a spiritual experience in and of itself. From the time of its inception through the next 6 years, the Reverend Roy Hedrick, pastor of Mount Clinton Church, managed the camp. The only hired person at all was a cook. Everything else was volunteer. 5 weeks of camp were held each summer. 2 for elementary children, 2 for junior high, and 1 for senior high. Each summer, there were approximately 500 children who came to this facility for camp, plus the volunteers staff, made up of laity and clergy who love children. I wish all of you could be where I am. See these 2 children right here. That's why we're here. From the time of its inception to the next 6 years, Hedrick performed an amazing ministry. And not only Roy, but every member of his family. None of the original buildings were ever winterized. Mr. Robert Swank, a member of Dunham Memorial Church in Singers Glen, offered to finance the construction of a winterized retreat center. And so the Swank building, located at the bottom of this ridge, was given in loving memory of his wife, Mrs. Alma Swank, and his parents, Mr. and Mrs. S. Hinton Swank. It proved to be a wonderful asset to the church. For the programs that were developed because of it, and the people demanding its use were unbelievable. Mr. and Mrs. Carl and Louise Ritchie of Mount Clinton Church were committed to the realization of making the camp a place of spiritual retreat for the children and the youth and the adults of the Virginia Conference. And so their encouragement and financial support brought into being what is now Camp, Overlook, and Retreat Center. Their financial commitment also led the construction of the Ritchie Retreat Cabin, picnic shelter, later Noah's Ark, and also sharing significantly with the Blessed Lodge. The Reverend C. Wilton Tinsman, 75 years of age, a retired minister, did all the stone mason work that you see on this campground. The fireplaces, the retaining wall, the beautiful bell towers and the ridge built in memory of his beloved wife, Georgia May. With the arrival of Ron Roden, and I apologize for putting you through this, with the arrival of Ron Roden and his staff, the commitment of Tom Kaufman to the Reed brothers has certainly been fulfilled. With the addition of the Blessings Lodge and Ron's leadership, that commitment to maintain a spiritual camp for children and youth has been greatly expanded to become a spiritual retreat center for persons of all ages, not only in this valley, but for groups throughout the Virginia Conference and even beyond. Those who made the commitment 50 years ago would rejoice with us today in achieving that dream. May their dream continue to flourish in the years to come as people gather here to overlook God's creation and to discover God's presence in new life and life-changing experiences in the presence of His Spirit. Amen.